Your life sits at an intersection of three pretty interesting things: being a Christ follower, being a father, and owning a CrossFit gym. What is one gift from those things and one challenge that I wouldn't expect?
I think it's all a gift. And I think the primary thing that comes out of all of those is opportunity. And so you have so many opportunities in this world as a father and a husband, as a entrepreneur and business owner, and then also as a follower of Christ. And so when you think of all those things intersecting, and I think about like a roundabout, and the middle of that roundabout is just opportunity. And so to me, that's just a very intriguing thing and a very exciting thing, even though roundabouts don't actually excite me. And our town seems to be moving towards more of them. But a roundabout has flow to it, constant flow. And then if one person messes it up, it affects all three, And so I think opportunity would be that. And then I think the challenge with all of it would be time management and how do you balance how much of yourself you give to all those. And then there's seasons of life where you need to give more of yourself to, maybe your family, or seasons. There are definitely seasons where my family was small. It was myself, and thus more could be given to the business, So, yeah, I think opportunity is the benefit of all that, and time management or lack thereof can be the challenge.
Makes a lot of sense. I won't say it feels obvious, but it's like kind of underlying of what a lot of people I think would point out really quickly as maybe symptoms of having three like buckets to put things in your life, and. Yeah, having to like decide or understand, maybe not decide, but to know what season you're in, that's a challenge I've been thinking through. But I want to go a little bit deeper on the opportunity first, because that's a pretty broad term. It's a very bundled term. There's a lot of like subsets of what that means. Whenever you're thinking about these three parts of this Venn diagram that is David Nichols, what does opportunity mean?
I think opportunity means taking advantage of the relationships that are formed through those three, you're saying Venn diagram, those three circles, but taking advantage of those opportunities from a relationship standpoint and from a standpoint of coming out and being who God made me to be. Okay. And so I feel that I am here to inspire growth for people. And so with my children, am I inspiring growth in all my opportunities? And it's not every single moment, but as a whole, am I inspiring growth for them? Growth in, obviously, as a child, many different ways. The same with relationships at the gym. Am I inspiring growth from a fitness standpoint? Am I inspiring growth from just a holistic improvement of life? Am I inspiring growth to pursue Christ? And so, you look at that, am I creating those opportunities? Well, those opportunities are created. Mm-hmm. Am I maximizing those opportunities? And so that's how I look at it, is with my son's baseball team that I get the opportunity to coach. I have an opportunity with these 11 young men to inspire growth. And what will that look like? Will they, at the age of 30, when they have their son as a 6-year-old wanting to play t-ball, will they look back and say, I want to coach because of the impact Coach Nichols had on me? And so that's one of the things that inspired me to coach, is looking back at the men that invested in my life, the men that held me accountable, the men that did not allow my foolishness to wreck me, but actually to shape me. And just to think that I could then have that opportunity to be that to somebody else and, in a way leave a legacy and continue the legacy from my previous coaches. And so that's an opportunity with these 10 and 11-year-old boys of, now at this age, and they're a pivotal age right now as they're transitioning. We've got some sixth graders, mostly fifth graders, and the things that they're faced with from a school perspective, they're faced with day to day with technology and social media. I have an opportunity to guide and direct them in a way that could be very impactful for the rest of their life. And so that's an opportunity, and I want to maximize that the best I can.
What was a way that your foolishness was able to become like part of who you are in a constructive way?
So immediately I think of seventh grade football, and I know I look huge right now on camera for those watching. I was not very huge in seventh grade, but I was the starting quarterback for our B team. And so I had a big leadership role, and very vividly remember one day we'd get dressed in the locker room, and then we'd come out and we'd wait between these two gyms before we all took the field together. And there's a kid that everybody picked on that had grown up with me. We weren't friends or anything, but we had grown up all through grade school, and everybody kind of picked on this kid. And there's another kid that had come up to me, and he was like, "Hey, let's go hit Larry on the head with our helmets." And so Larry was facing out, probably nobody really around him because he was a kid that was a loner, and I wouldn't call him an outcast, but he had been outcasted by others. And he's got his helmet on, and he's facing straight out. And this other player, Jason, was like, "Hey, let's come up and take our helmets off and hit him on the right in the ear holes." And I thought, sure, why not? And we did that. And we did it so hard. And this is embarrassing to say because I think about like how I would potentially parent my children if this happened. But his earpieces shot straight down because it unbuckled them. And, it wasn't pleasant, And so our coaches ended up finding out. Some kids reported it, or I forget how they found out. But they called us into the office, and, this was the day of bike shorts and tube socks, And I had all the coaches lined up, and they were eighth grade coaches at this point. And so even though I was playing seventh grade, the eighth grade coaches were upstairs. And they looked at me, and, they had the other kid in, and they chewed him out and told him to leave. And then they just said, "We expect that from him, but not from you." And so then they, said, "What's disappointing is you had such an opportunity to say no and to do the right thing. And then you chose to do something, impulsive and not very intelligent." And then they asked the question, how do you expect the rest of your team to follow you if this is how you're going to treat one of your offensive linemen? Because that's where the story kind of comes back to is, he's one of our my offensive lineman is the quarterback. And so they made me undress, and I had to go out and be in street clothes. And this was maybe a day or so before our game, and just watch practice in just street clothes. And then eventually we had a ton of running to do, things that'd probably get coaches in trouble nowadays. But we had to run a lot. But then there's just sitting in that office with Coach Sanchez, Coach Miller, Coach Wheeler, Coach Bennett, and just knowing that my brothers had been through that program. They all knew my dad. They knew who I was. And they were just like, "We expect that from them or him, but we did not expect that from you." And so that was a moment that even to this day, I think back on often, and so I'm not sure what could have prevented that from happening. But I worry less about that and more about how can I not put myself in that situation again?
100%. And the kids you're coaching now, as on the baseball team, it's like I can't imagine if they would do that, you would be able to handle it so well, I would think, having had such a similar experience.
Well, yeah, and I think the lesson, the takeaway, more than anything, was to know that I had these adult men that had an expectation for me, and I had just not met that expectation.
Yeah.
And so that was a realization. And one of the first times I really had, hey, you're a leader, kind of spoken into me. And so I think about now, how can I speak that into young men? So for example, we did team captains this last year, and we had the kids vote on that. And then, coaches, we voted a little bit, and then we nominated these team captains with the hope that, and last year they're all fourth graders, is that even at the age of 10 years old in a fourth grade, some of these young men can begin to see that they're looked at, And what's kind of neat is, my son was voted for one of those captains, and just being able to have a conversation with him as a dad and son driving home of, do you understand the weight of this? That means that all of those boys are looking up to you. So like what you do, they do. What you don't do, they don't do. So how can we lead in a way that reflects who you are and who you want to be? And that doesn't mean don't be silly, because he's a total goofball. But there's an element of seriousness that you need to have at times. So I expect you to lead that way. And if you don't, there is accountability. And accountability is when you're just pulled back to the standard that you've strayed from a little bit. So that's the hope, especially with these young men, is just how can we call them into leadership at a young age? How can then we as coaches model that for them? And so you say, I would have a reaction, right? And so, yes, I have many reactions in practices and games. Each of those is an opportunity to show the kids how to react. And so something we talk about is that we can't celebrate to the highest and then feel sorry at the lowest. Because if our emotions just move at what we feel and we react that way, then that's a great emotion. That's the wrong demonstration. And so trying to get these boys to understand, if you strike out, that's not the end of the world. But in the same way as if you get an out, you don't need to celebrate that. You did your job. And you did your job on both. Your job in baseball is to fail and strike out. That's part of it. And so how can we just return to the dugout the same with both of those? Because the more times we do that, the more dialed in we can be in a game. I don't get much of that from them because they're in fourth grade, but they get a lot of that messaging from us, because the more we can message that, it's eventually going to settle and resonate as they mature as young men. And then I've done my job. I think of it more as planting seeds than harvesting the crop. The harvesting of the crop is going to be later in life for these guys, but I get the opportunity to plant the seed. And so I'm going to plant it and water it the best I can, and, be excited to see how these young men turn out.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask how much they get it at 10, 11 years old, but you kind of hit on it there.
Yeah. I think it varies. I think that the challenge in today's culture, and this would be a little get off my lawn kind of thing, is there's not a lot of accountability for stuff. And so our team is tough at times for these young men because we do have accountability. If you don't have your shirt tucked in, practice stops until you tuck in your shirt. If you don't have your cap, you're running. So if they show up and they don't have their team ball cap, they run. If you show up late and it's not your parents' fault, you run. And I have accountability. I have parents call me. I am running late from work, so my son will be late. And I said, thanks for telling me. They don't run because that's mom and dad.
Yeah.
There have been times my children have been late because of me. There have also been times they're late because of them. And so trying to just create a level of accountability for them. When homework doesn't get counted wrong anymore. There's some things
What?
Yeah. They get to turn in homework depending on your district. All right. They can turn in homework up to the end of the 6 weeks. and still get 70% credit, and they can make things up to get a 70. It's just real, in my opinion, soft. No offense to educators. They actually aren't making the choices.
Yeah.
Legislation is to some degree, but there's just not a ton. I mean, the internet, if I'm losing a video game, I can just turn it off. There's no repercussions, or they're playing Fortnite and they got all the cheat codes, and, so it's like, there's all these things in their life that set them up to win. Mm-hmm. And because of that, there's not a lot of failure. And so when, we play, and we'll stick with the baseball team, and, they play the most failure sport available. Yeah. And so
baseball's amazing in that way.
Yeah.
If you hit 1/3 of the balls thrown your way, you're going to the Hall of Fame in your career. It's incredible.
Exactly. And so, there's opportunities in that we try to, take advantage of, me and my staff. But at the end of the day, like, getting these young men to see that, like, you need to fail you're going to fail the rest of your life. Like, you actually need failed relationships to have real relationships. You need failed test scores to know how to study. And so I think failure is a great thing. I think most people are afraid of failure when they should embrace it. Because through failure, you learn what doesn't work. And I think too often we think there's this one way. Not everything is math. Not everything is 2 + 2 = 4. And what works for you from a relational standpoint might not work for me, could work for Sally over here or Bob over here. But there needs to be failure in life so that you know what not to do.
Absolutely.
In my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Kind of an interesting parallel from this book right here, actually, by Roy Sutherland. It's called Alchemy. This is kind of about advertising and marketing. But something that he says is that in life, 1 × 10 doesn't always equal 10 × 1. And it's interesting because it kind of works with working out a little bit, thinking about, if you're doing 10 reps, your 1 rep max versus... But for advertising, thinking of 1 × 10 not equaling 10 × 1, like you were saying, not everything is just 2 + 2 = 4. In the advertising world, it's like the one person that buys your thing once, that conversion is very different from the 10 people, or 10 people buying it once is very different from the one person that's going to buy it over and over and over and over. That conversion is very different, and the way you approach the advertising behind that's very different. And it's a similar thing to kind of what we're talking about here, where like not everything is just exactly what the math looks like, where like there's not just a right answer. And sometimes the best lesson is to know what not to do, as opposed to just getting told what to do correctly.
And that's the difference between knowledge and action. And so I think there's a lot of people in this world that are so afraid of failure. And I've been there before. You have all the knowledge, you know everything to do, but you don't do it. And so you're paralyzed, by perfection, or you're paralyzed by the fear of it. And so then you never do it. Yeah. I mean, it's the same, totally different topic, but it's investing. The mathematics makes sense, but anybody, I shouldn't say young, but a lot of people don't trust or just don't invest well.
Mm-hmm. Most young people.
Because they don't believe that it's actually going to work, but yet we have all the data that says it works. Mm-hmm.
And a big thing there's patience too, right?
Yeah, true.
With everything that we're talking about, primarily with investing, but even just with a relationship or with a business venture, it's like patience is so important. And obviously you have to work hard to like while you're being patient, you have to work hard to make whatever you're trying to happen.
Well, patience isn't passivity. Patience.
Ooh, good. Yeah.
Patience is not passivity. Patience is saying, I'm going to let the process play out. I'm going to adjust my expectations continually as this process is playing out. And so, when you look at the idea of success, like what is success? And I think everybody has a lot of we have a similar concept, but different definitions for success. And I think as a young entrepreneur, like my first goal, like I'm successful if I make $100,000. And then it's like, wait, I'm successful if I make 200,000. And then it's like, no, now the space at CrossFit had blown up. Now I'm successful if I have 2 gyms. And then it's like, now I'm successful. And you can continue to like chase these moving goalposts. And the reason I say moving is because we are never truly satisfied in our soul without a relationship that's active with the Lord. We'll always try to fill a God void in our heart with a world, and we'll constantly be chasing something. So if success is just about these goalposts and they're constantly changing, then you're actually never successful because the next thing is bigger and better and this and that. When we kind of, and I say we, I don't have a mouse in my pocket. I'm referring to my wife, Lindsey. When we made some decisions to adjust how we define success, and we started defining success as we want to create a place, a culture where people feel known because they feel seen and because they feel loved, then that's success for us. Because if we have a place, and you have these places in your life, I have them, where you feel seen, known, and loved, like you go to those. You know, like you can, there's an analogy that a good friend of mine has given me multiple times about fences versus feed. And so there's an idea that you can just create these fences for livestock, and that's going to keep them in and they're not going to go anywhere. But you could also create feed. If you're providing water and food, nourishment, okay, then the livestock are not going to go away. Now, obviously, ranchers and ag folks, I know that's not totally true, but from a visual, analogy standpoint, it makes sense, right? And it actually is true with hunting. If you have a deer feeder, and in Texas we get to hunt under a feeder, deer that is, and pigs, the wildlife goes there. So you have, low fence land all over. And if you're providing the food, the source for nutrition, they all come. And so when Lindsey and I made a decision that that's what we wanted out of the gym, is we wanted a place of nourishment, then it was, ironically, we moved 2 gyms to 1 gym. Like we shrunk a little bit in that way. We began to pursue relationships, over receipts. And so, and not to say we didn't ever really care about people, but it was a cloudy vision of what God wanted for us. And so as we better define success for ourselves and what we felt the Lord was calling us to, it became extremely clear. And so I talked about accountability a little bit ago with my son of like, if they stray from the standard, our goal is to pull them back, and that's accountability. And once you create that standard of like, this is a place for people to be seen and known and loved. And when you lay that down, then like all your decisions of everything else become pretty easy.
Because they're all in support of your mission.
Well, you just ask, like, does this, fit the bill over here?
And you probably feel a little bit better about it consciously too, like in your soul, like you were saying, because now every decision is not trying to eke another dollar out of the system. You're trying to give purpose and meaning to people that are coming to the thing you're building. Yeah.
And I would even go as far as to say it's not chasing something that's unobtainable, but providing something that's life-giving. And so, it's not just continuing to chase what somebody else says is good. It's actually saying, hey, this is good. And, it's a unique situation to have group fitness. And in one class, you can have so much diversity. And it's from gender, race, age, socioeconomics, political views, religious views, all that, all in one class. And everybody has a consensus. This workout sucks. We think that you hate us. And I'll see you tomorrow. And it's that you can't find that anywhere else. And I say that with a lot of humility. I know there are other places and spaces, right? But to truly see what our gym has evolved to is humbling and exciting and scary, but it's what we've been given. And so Lindsey and I are going to steward it as best we can. We're going to keep ourselves to the standard, which has cost us at times. And it's, I go to bed and put my head on my pillow and I feel great when we're aligned and we're aligned with our goal. And so it makes decision-making a lot easier,
What's scary about it?
The weight of it, like to think that we are gifted from the Lord these opportunities, and are we maximizing them? And, there's, I think, trusting in the Lord, having faith in his provision. When you add the human element to that, it can create complacency, and it can, and passivity, if you want to go, I feel that's a negative word, but
kind of.
Yeah. And so like you can get a little complacent, and there have been seasons in which we have, Lindsey and I have been complacent, and there's an effect of that, and it's not always positive. It's actually not positive, And so when you, like staying true to the vision and then creating the action and continuing the action behind it, I think is weighty in a good way. I do feel that the Lord has given us what we can handle and what we can burden, which then is easier to deal with at times. And I think that what's scary about it, to go back and I don't want to dodge the question, but what's scary about it is to know more than anything that it was given to us, and it can also be taken away. Mm-hmm. And being open-handed with that, and not attaching too much of my own personal success and failure based off of that.
Especially it being given and being taken away. I had a mentor once tell me that it's really hard to accept something into your hand if you have a closed fist around it. If you kind of let go a little bit and let it be what it's going to be, that open hand can have things placed into it. Yeah. Obviously, it's much easier to have things taken out of that hand, but that's that faith element that we're talking about.
Exactly.
What would you say is a part of your life that people misunderstand or assume they understand because you own a CrossFit gym that they're just totally wrong about?
Yeah, that, Lindsey and I have this perfect biohacked life of health and wellness, that our children, eat, kale salads all the time, that there's this element of perfection from a health and nutrition standpoint. And, that's not true. That's what, that. And, also I think, and I believe most of it's tongue in cheek, but there are a lot of comments about how people feel that I create workouts to harm them. And create pain and suffering. Mm-hmm. And so I would say those would be the two misconceptions, because I almost never consider an individual while making a workout.
Like, oh yeah, this is going to really suck for Bob.
All right, no. Kevin's going to die with this. Not part of it. Not part of it.
That is funny. I could see that mostly being tongue in cheek, but maybe on a really bad day, someone's like, yeah, this one was meant for me.
Yeah, true.
What is, the assumption of perfection, like, because you're kind of running the show a little bit in the gym, that's interesting. I can see it. I can see that perspective, but I don't think I would assume that, just because I don't
Well,
know.
perfection from the sense of not perfect human, but
Yeah.
and I use the term biohacking, like we're taking all these supplements to optimize our health, and we don't ever eat sugar, and we go to bed early, and we work out 3 times a day, and like and it's like, no, I am hopeful that all the stars align and I get a workout in, or I would probably don't need to eat as much junk food, last night we're playing a little card game with the family. Me and my daughter and my son had a bowl of chocolate chips we're eating, and it's,
there you go.
people would not assume that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
That makes sense. That makes more sense from the
Health and well. Yeah.
So did they just assume that you don't have any like joy in your life?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would hope that they don't assume that.
Right.
But I think you can be healthy and be joyful.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Because I do think that goes back to who you want to be as a human. And so, like, what is your standard? We talked about the standard for the business of place to be known, seen, and loved. We don't make those kind of commitments to our body most of the time. And because I think it's a societal issue. We should celebrate everything. And then how do we celebrate in America?
Food.
And beverage, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like everything's a celebration. You deserve, like, you worked today. You showed up and went to work today, Austin. So you get to celebrate. Yeah. And so we've provided too much comfort with food and beverage. We also, this whole nother podcast, we have an extremely crooked food system that does create taste buds that want crap.
Yeah.
And so
it's good for profit margins.
Yeah. So I think that people don't make good, solid commitments for themselves because things don't, quote, taste good. But I think if you eliminated all the bad stuff, good things taste better. And there's a comfort element. So, Chick-fil-A is great because it's fast.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it does taste good. But it's not good for you, but people are willing for the comfort of convenience and taste, drive through Chick-fil-A versus fix something at the house. But I don't think I think it's a societal issue because I think our society is too fast. We're like too wrapped up in speed.
Where do you think that comes from?
The fear of missing out. I think acronyms FOMO, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the fear of missing out. My child, I talked about our baseball team, so I'll clean this up. We're still a rec level. We're premier, so it's between rec and select. So 5th grade, we're still rec technically. That's how we're categorized in baseball. But the amount of children that are put into the rat race of youth sports in 2nd, 3rd grade, and then I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, except for the 3 to 4 practices a week that an 8-year-old has to go to or a 7-year-old has to go to. I'm not making decisions for other people's children. Everybody can make their own decisions, and I have no questions about why you do what you do with your kids. So I do want to be clear with that. But the way I see it is if 5 nights a week, everybody is gone from dinner. Like if you don't eat dinner at your house, I find that can create some instability in the family unit.
Say more about that. That's fascinating.
Because the speed of life, I know your folks, okay, and I know most of your upbringing, and I imagine, even with the activities you're involved in, y'all ate family dinners together.
Yeah. Most of the time.
Yeah, most of the time. And you and your sister were very active in, through different activities. And I know your parents were active in the community and in their jobs. And there were times where maybe they weren't home. Same as us. We coach at night. So there are times where we're not home right at time, But like last night, example, Lindsey got home about 6:30. She sat down and ate dinner at the house, at the table. And then like we all kind of gathered close by, and, she and I actually ate together. So the kids had already eaten. She and I had the moment to eat together. I find that very important. We don't always get that, but when we do, try to take advantage of it. I give her a hard time sometimes because she's like, hey, she said this at lunch earlier this week. She's like, hey, do you want to have a date with me? I'm like, sure. And she goes, okay, I'm sitting down to eat lunch. I'm like, and then the boys were like, yeah, y'all go on a date. And so I went and sat down, and I'd already eaten lunch or whatever. And we're talking through some things. And, one of the kids, I forget who it was like, well, this isn't very glamorous. It's like sometimes once you're 15 years in, dating isn't always glamorous, right? But when you're not having that time together, when you're not having face-to-face, eye-to-eye contact, then I think you miss out on relational depth. And, from a standpoint of, there's a study, and golly, I hate this on podcasts when people do this, give vague references to stuff. But there's a study out there that talked about how engaging in eye-to-eye, face-to-face conversation for a minimum of 30 minutes a day helps your internal happiness and how you would rate your level of happiness in life. And so if we remove that from the table, then we're in trouble, And I think there's just some good things at our table, at the house. It's where the kids can say any word they want to, and they can ask about words, which creates some fun when you have some children that enjoy cussing, at a young age. And so, we don't encourage it, but we have some fun with it. And I think having those opportunities at a table versus in a car ride, or versus, anywhere else broken up in the house, I just think you're missing out, and we most weeks always have Sunday dinner together at our house, sitting at a table, because that's a little sacred time for us. Throughout the week, because we're normal, going back to the expectation is we don't do everything right. But yeah, throughout the week, we don't always get that opportunity. And so there are times where it's practices that get in the way, but we strategize. We actually were about 45 minutes ago having this discussion at the house of how can we adjust our work schedule so that the days and nights that our kids have activities, we're working. And there's some strategy there of, if we have baseball and dance and youth group all on Wednesday, is there a possibility that one of us can work on Wednesday versus work on a Tuesday night? Because what does that give us on Tuesday night? Family dinner.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the beauty of having your own business, is the flexibility ideally to do that. And so those are, creating those moments, it goes back to one of the first things that I talked about. It's opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so you could either avoid the opportunity or create it. My oldest son is 7th grade. So he's starting 7th grade. And so we have, if my math is right, maybe it's wrong, but 5 more Thanksgivings, Christmases, birthdays at our house.
That's a wild reframe, because seventh grade, it's like, that's still a kid. When you think 5 more Christmases, that's
right. Because 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. Okay, so 6.
6 including this year.
Yeah, 6 including this year. And so you have 6 more Halloweens.
Yeah. Oh, that's weird.
Now, even with that, like if you want to go deeper with that, like 2 more.
Oh, because he's 13 or
yeah,
or,
he'll be 13 this year. Mm-hmm. And so like he's been on this thing, like he wants to host a Halloween party with his friends. Mm-hmm. Now, growing up, we did not participate. My family didn't participate in Halloween, so I think Halloween's kind of weird still. My first year to ever participate in trick or treating was 12 years ago when he was a baby. So that being said, Halloween's still foreign to me. But he wants to host a Halloween party with his buddies. And we've kind of told him no. And then last night we were talking and I thought in my mind, like maybe 2 years left of real Halloween. Now I understand in high school and then definitely in college there are Halloween parties, but
different flavor,
right? And so, my heart just really tenderized and I was like, yeah, here's the deal. And so we made a little bit of a deal based on grades and some other things of, we'll figure out how to do it. It's a Saturday night. We'll probably have baseball that night. So, there's some negotiating with him on when the party would be. Mm-hmm. But it's like, okay, let's figure that out. But that conversation doesn't happen. And this is now I'm moving away from the dinner table to like, if I don't take the time to lay with him before he goes to bed, once again, it's another opportunity. And, maximizing that the best we can. And when you think about laying your kids to bed at night, which is a pain, and all my parents said amen to that, because it's a emotional manipulating matter. Because, they need 16 drinks of water, they need an extra hug, and they need all that. We always write that off as they're just trying to manipulate us, or they just want, I don't know if they're consciously manipulating, but they just want to be with their dad and their mom. And I think there's something really sweet about laying in bed and having your back rubbed or your hand rubbed or whatever, from your parent, and the safety and security of that scary bedroom and the monsters under the bed and everything that our mind creates that's fake, right? And then this younger generation is, because they've had to grow up faster than us, are then having to process in the stillness of their own room, which is where we all get in our own heads, by the way, right? Now somebody that doesn't have the cognitive and emotional development is having to process, am I fat? Why was I not asked to this birthday party? Or why did so-and-so not call me or text me, and begin to process things that they don't have the ability to process. And so spending that time, taking that opportunity to create a level of comfort, to create security. Ideally, you're praying over your child, ideally out loud, so they can hear it. It's like that's just another opportunity. Now, there are times where the third time out of the room kind of hits a nerve. But I do think that the bedtime and the dinner table, and I would even say the breakfast table, you have an opportunity to be there at the beginning of the day, and then the beginning of the end of the day, and then the end of the day. I think those are moments that parents should never pass up. And if you find that you are, then I think you need to manage how you're aligning your goals as a parent. And some things, man, just don't work. I get it. We have people at the gym that they have to come and work out at 4:45, shower, and go straight to work. I'm not talking about that person like that. But when given the opportunity and we pass it up, to watch more football, or we pass it up so that we can watch another Kardashians or Virgin River or something. You know, it's like when we're trading out our own comfort for time with our kids. And I'm not talking about outliers in certain situations. I just think it's a dangerous place to be, especially if you want to be a parent, you know. And that's what I think makes parenting hard, is the giving up, the constant sacrifice of your own time. But it's the best investment you can ever make.
The requirement of selflessness.
Yeah. It's the most selfless relationship outside of marriage. I was trying to figure out how to get married. Marriage, I think, is the most selfless.
I agree. Yeah. Not having kids, I guess.
But I think the different, yeah, and you'll find that out. But it's like the difference between marriage and kids is intellectual and emotional maturity. And so, like, my children, something I said earlier, there's a difference between knowledge and action, right? Kids know, they don't have the maturity to act.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Right? They literally don't. Like, psychologists and will tell you that, you know.
Like, they could probably tell you back the rules you've given them for whatever situation they're in,
yes,
but they don't are still going to break
They don't
them.
have the cognitive maturity to make the right decision.
Yeah.
Okay. And that doesn't happen until later in life, which is kind of why we have certain parameters on different things.
Like 16 to drive, 18.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of.
But in an ideal world, I do want to caveat that your spouse has the intellectual and emotional maturity. And so being selfless to Lindsey feels and looks different than being selfless to my kids. They're both challenging. They're both worth the investment. And they're both very high demanding investments. So kind of first out of your paycheck kind of thing. And I find that there are seasons in my life where I'm not doing that. And those are the most discombobulating, chaotic, restless, disorienting seasons of my life, is when that investment wasn't made first. It's like, okay, hey, I've done all these other things, and I'm going to give you what's left over.
Yeah.
Versus first and best.
Is it as simple, if you're in that season, as just like going right back to them first, or is there kind of a transition there? How does that work?
Well, I think self-awareness would be the first thing, right? And realizing what has knocked me off kilter, and what is
Like looking for like the cause of it?
Yeah. And you know, and I feel that over the last 10 years, I've grown in self-awareness and being very mindful. Now, I'll fail at this. I mean, there have been times where I absolutely blunder self-awareness. But I started watching people that just ended up sucking at something. It's probably not the right word. They had some epic life failures. And watching and trying to find a consistent theme. And it's like they lack like self-awareness. They don't know how they come off. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how they're being perceived. And I don't think that everybody's perception matters, but it's, you know, you start looking at that. And, you know, to me, self-awareness is saying, it's not like looking at my belly button. It's trying to pull me out and put me in your shoes. How are you seeing me? How am I showing up to you? And so I think that when you begin to look at self-awareness, you say, okay, hey, am I being grumpy? Am I being short and snippy? Yeah, I am. I actually am. Okay. Why?
Yeah.
And majority of it is because I'm not getting my way. Or there is an unmet expectation out there, which is not getting my way as well, you know? And so I think that looking at self-awareness and then assessing expectations. Because unmet expectations create tension. And when you have relationships with unmet expectations, most of the time those expectations have never been voiced one way or the other. And so if you're in a relationship with someone and you're expecting daily texting or whatever, or a check-in or whatever, communication of some sort, and you've never discussed what that expectation is, or you have not participated in some of that, then it creates confusion and tension. And then that's where then someone can get angry or mad because they had expectation here and it was unmet.
Let me put one on your plate about that. It's, I wish I could remember the name of the quote. Like you said, I hate when this happens, the real vague references, but, gosh, I think
we just need a producer over there fact checking.
I know. Yeah. Hiring a producer, salary's pretty low, but let me know.
Claude, you got it, buddy.
There you go. Unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments.
Yeah.
That tension ends up being like anger and grumpiness.
No,
and
absolutely.
comes out in a pretty awful way usually.
Absolutely. And then part of the irony in that is when you look at it from a marriage, let's just stay with marriage. Okay. What was that a breakdown in then? If there are these unmet expectations, where was the breakdown?
Communication.
Bingo. Well, what's required for communication?
Well, a few things. Listening to a street.
Yeah. Interaction, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So face to face, maybe it's on the phone. And I think that's where I am extremely thankful, almost said blessed or lucky, but I'm thankful that my wife and I communicate a lot because I know of marriages where that doesn't happen. And so when I say a lot, we talk on the phone every day, like every day. We will talk on the phone while driving kids places or going to and from work. We will talk on the phone both while driving, while leaving work, a lane apart from each other. And so most of all that communication, actually all of it is useful. Okay. And it can be useful in many ways. One, we're actually working through logistics of something. One, we're discussing a business subject. Two, also being just good for the soul. And so there is communication. Now, I will attest there are times where I don't communicate well or don't communicate at all about something, which then almost always leads to tension. And that tension is created by my lack of communication. And so I think the more you can communicate and be open, the better, the more stability a relationship can have. Almost said the better the relationship. The relationship's not better. There's just more stability.
Yeah. I want to linger on that just a little bit because there's an interesting kind of parallel that I think I'm seeing with this, how it's like that tension's kind of on you sort of whenever you're not communicating, and there's like a responsibility there to both understand that, see it, and to fix it. But there's a parallel with what you were talking about earlier with the gym, where that mindset shifted to be like you're providing a space for people. And in both of these circumstances, it's about what you're giving. And in like this very fast-paced world that we live in, that we're talking about how everything is so fast and so now, I think we have a tendency, because we're in that society, to always be looking for what we can get out of something, what we can get out of our partner and our relationship, what we can get out of building this business, setting monetary goals and things like that, having 2 gyms. And the reframe of what can I provide, how much can I give in this situation, giving that stability. I wonder why. I'm just like kind of thoughts out of the mouth right now, but I wonder why that is. That the frame of giving and providing and like initiating in that way kind of creates that foundation of stability. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I define it as serving. I think we were created not only to serve the Lord and directly serve the Lord, but also to serve others. And so I think it's framing your actions around serving others, which doesn't mean service and enslavement are two separate things.
A lot of delineation in the Bible about that difference. Yeah.
But just in real life, I mean, if you think about I'm enslaved to something, then it's a master. It's begrudging. You're having to pay this debt of some capacity, right? You didn't choose it, most likely. But when you look at service, you are choosing it. It is your action towards somebody, where enslavement is their action towards you. And so I think it can be more framed towards service. Are you willing to serve others? And then the way I see it at times, and I say at times because there are times I don't see it as service, I see it as a pain in the butt, is if the Lord sought me out, found me in the depth of my sin, redeemed my life through the death of his son on the cross, and then over time grew a skill set in me, and then gifted me to have a desire to inspire people for growth, then serving him is also serving man. In Colossians 3, I believe it's 17, says, work at everything as for man as if you're working for the Lord. And somebody told me that in college, and that always resonated with me of, I'm not in a job for somebody else except the Lord. And if I'm going to be a scrub worker and terrible, like, how is that ever a witness to somebody else? I think you lose a lot of credibility when you don't do a good job serving humanity. I think it's really hard then to share the gospel with somebody.
100%. Yeah.
And so I think if you, this will be a very extreme analogy, but if I always yelled and cussed people out at the gym, it would be like, I think, very shocking if I was to be like, hey, did you know that Jesus died for your sins? You want to come to church with me? And like, wait, you just cussed me out and yelled at me because I didn't get my chin over the bar on pull-ups. And I'm not saying I don't ever raise my voice, but it's, I think that in that extreme analogy, you lose the credibility. And so I think that if I firmly believe that God has gifted me in this, I have a duty to push and pursue that to its greatest level with humanity. And so that's how Lindsey and I see our opportunity at the gym, is we've been gifted this and given this opportunity. And I can either begrudgingly show up, or I can show up in a way that I'm grateful that the Lord's given us this. It's a sweet gig, man. And be thankful for it. And then just say, okay, like, use me, but I can't be a passive participant. I have to be active in it.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes to service, getting back to you have to have a service mindset. And I would say that for all business owners. It really doesn't matter if you offer a service or product. It's about serving others and serving your staff. It's, serving your neighbors, literally your neighbors, to serving your customers.
Was there ever a moment that the responsibility of God giving you the gym as a stewardship opportunity kind of became a realization for you and Lindsey?
Absolutely. I would say it was probably around 2013.
It's like 5-ish years in, 5 or 6.
Yeah, so we started in '08. Yeah. And so, yeah, maybe 5 or 6 years in, what had happened was pretty prevalent early on in CrossFit, and even now still happens, is CrossFit gym will open. You'll hire some coaches, things will go good. And then these coaches think they can do a better job, so they leave and open their own gym in some capacity. And so I think our number is close to 20 gyms have started from people, whether it's members or other coaches from within our gym. Which there early on, that was a very disorienting thing. Loyalty is a huge thing for me. Loyalty and authenticity. And so I find that starting a gym behind, if you're a coach for me and you start a gym behind my back, that kind of violates those two things. If you're a member and you start a gym behind my back, kind of violates those two things, right? And so very early on, one of my first coaches ever, I'll really shorten the story, but I was in my office and there were people talking outside the windows and I could hear them. And that's how I got wind that coach was going to leave and open his own gym. And they were actively recruiting people within.
Oh, that's...
So looking back, there are some fundamental differences that coach and I had with each other. We were totally copacetic, but just life-wise very different, okay? And we had different desires and different dreams, and there are things that I was very deficient in as a young man, as a boss, as an entrepreneur, as a coworker, as a fellow friend. Like, there are some deficiencies I had. But in that, this betrayal came up. It's like, okay, so this coach is leaving. They go and open a gym. And that was within a year of us opening. They had then left to open this other gym. And I say they, his girlfriend at the time, future wife, and then ex-wife, all same person.
Oh, okay.
Coach
okay.
for us. But then took other members and went and opened another gym. And that was hard to digest.
It's a big violation of that loyalty and trust.
And we had lunch eventually, and kind of talked through some things. And then he and I are fine now. I mean, it's like,
that's good.
Water under the bridge or whatever. And there are things like, I admitted my immaturity and my faults. He admitted his. We're good. I think if we were to go back, like you go back to David, and that was 2009, I think. He didn't have the capacity to have a mature conversation about, you've inspired me to do this. You gave me a platform to do it. You actually showed me that it can happen. Now I want to go and do this elsewhere. I didn't have that capacity, and I don't think that Brandon had it either. Do we now? Oh, absolutely. But we didn't then. So once again, like, this goes back to a story earlier about football. It's like, I don't know if all that could be avoided, but I just have an opportunity to learn from it. So anyhow, that happened. And over time, a few other situations similar happened. To then, I was really frustrated. I was talking to a friend of mine at the time who actually coached with us. And Andy comes from a basketball coaching background. And one of the things he talked about was the coaching tree of Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke basketball coach, and how, or was it Roy Williams from, it might've been Roy Williams from North Carolina, but he discussed how all these assistant coaches, and probably works for both guys actually, would go to these big time head coaches and they'd be their assistants to then springboard them into bigger jobs. And so you could either have resentment towards that or view it as a gift that then you get to participate in their springboarding, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which then it's like, okay, but honesty and transparency would be great. But but there are other people that we, openly helped go and, start a gym. Like we didn't fund it or anything, but, we supported them in that process. So, thinking through, the different challenges and all that, I think that then knowing that we are an opportunity for other people, and that if we do our best to steward what we have, then that's going to give us more opportunity. And it's not financial more opportunity. It's more clarity. It's more conviction to our mission. So when did it all shift? It shifted when there's somebody, once again, within the gym that then was going to start their own gym. And we found out through a weird circle of things on social media. Okay. Because somebody had liked something. We're like, well, I didn't know that gym existed. Look it up. Okay. But then that coach reached out and said, as a former coach of ours that at that time was not coaching for us for Clarity. And they're doing their own thing. And so then we just, kind of talked, and I was like, hey, best of luck, it is within a competing area. So I was kind of annoyed. But then I had somebody share, I was at church one day and the pastor was talking about the Lord gifting different things and like you having opportunities and calling you to different ministries. And in that, it's one of the few times like I've like audible in my head heard the Lord say, do you really think you're the only one I've called to open a CrossFit gym in this area? And so there's this moment of like, yes, I can service 95,000 people. And I say that tongue in cheek, but it's like, wow, like the Lord hasn't called one person to music ministry. It wasn't just Michael W. Smith and that's it. He's called more than one person, to do a lot of things. So I have an opportunity to either partner in Christ and support a friend, not super close friend, but a friend, and support another person that is living a gospel-centered life, that wanted to serve a community and wanted to do it through CrossFit. So why would I not support that? So that was, we're in the hospital with having one of our kids. I want to say it's Graham. So let's call it 2016. Okay. And actually that fits. So that gym for a handful of circumstances did not last. Okay. So it didn't stay afloat. And, September of probably 2017, maybe 2018, I got a phone call from him and he said, hey, just want to let you know I'm going back to full-time teaching and we're shutting the gym down, but I want to give you all of our members. And so then began the process of onboarding all these new people from his gym. And so I don't know how much of that would have been possible had I not shifted my view. And whether that was possible or not doesn't really matter. But when I was able to look at it like, wait, other people can be called to this, the removal of that pride in my heart and arrogance in my heart really changed how I approached a lot of things. And then the subsequent other people that have then kind of left the gym, some of which good terms and some of which bad, just became easier to digest. Just, man, let them go do their thing then. So that's going back, somewhere in 2014, I'm pretty sure it's 2016 when we were having Graham. And so it's January of 16. And then by what would have been, my guess, April of, it was September of 17 or 18. Yeah, 18. Then, that's when that gym ended up shutting down. And, and I think that they made the best decision because that family is rocking. They're doing great things. Just the gym is not where they need to be anymore. So,
yeah. It's kind of like you were saying earlier with planting seeds almost, where it's what you sow is what you reap.
Yeah.
And you kind of hinted at it earlier and didn't quite say exactly what it was, but has there ever been a season or decision where following Christ actually kind of cost you in business?
I don't know if there's been direct cost necessarily. I can tell you this, that it has given us probably more opportunities than it's cost us anything. And the opportunities are about shifting and changing people's perception of white evangelical Christians, to be quite honest, that may or may not lean more conservative from a political standpoint. And so we've just had a lot of opportunities to welcome people into our community that more likely than not don't align with us, and do it in a way that's not condemning, that's not humiliating, that's, really more than anything, just get in class and sweat with us, And so, have there been times? Probably. I'm sure that there are people that have quit or canceled a membership or not stayed at the gym potentially because of some of the things that we do. So like we try not to, and Spotify really doesn't help us with this, but we try to keep our music clean of, words and content best we can. And so some people don't like that. But no, I don't, like I said, it's just given us opportunities. We had, I'll tell this story, and, the story is actually pretty impactful, I think. Well, not that I think, it's impactful to me, because I do think that there's a narrative out there in this world that white evangelicals are the worst people ever. And now it could just be my algorithm, but I feel that there's a lot of hate that comes, specifically men too, because we may have certain biblical convictions on gender and sexuality. And so I want to share this story because it's really my hope is that this is what we get. And we had somebody reach out, and they are transitioning, and they wanted to join the gym. And they were concerned about what our policies were for transgender athletes. They were concerned about how people may perceive them and whatnot. And, Lindsey fielded the call. So she had the first interaction, and I was just like, our policy is come join, I don't, now in full fairness, I don't want to pretend that my life is similar to everybody else's. And so I have gone through certain things and I've not gone through certain things. And so how I'm perceived by the world is very different than some folks. And I want to acknowledge that. And so this athlete came in, and I coached their first class, and They were normal, worked out, it was great. And they were still very hesitant to join in membership because they did not know how everybody would feel about them. And they're very concerned with, I don't want to make people feel uncomfortable, and I don't want people to think this or do that. And I just pleaded with them. I said, give us a chance, give us a chance. And then they said, well, I read your bio and I know y'all are Christians, and I've just had some really bad experiences. And I said, I'm very sorry. You don't deserve that. I don't know what has been said or done to you, but you do not deserve that. And I'm going to go out on a limb, and you're going to get treated different here. And so every year we send out Christmas cards. And so it's something that we do. We handwrite them, send them out to everybody. And so we got a letter back from, it might have actually been an email, to be quite honest. We got communication back from this athlete, and they stated, hey, we got your Christmas card. Thank you so much for, sending it. And thank you for the experience. And thank you for being a welcoming place. And first time they said this is the first time they felt they could be themselves in a public type setting.
Wow.
And to think that everything we've been through for the last, at that point, 17 years or whatever, that all of that could lead to this one moment to where ideally we have changed the perception of how a Christian can welcome and respond to somebody, regardless of whatever what we're responding to. It's like, that's all. If I had to go through all of that just for this, and I'm not saying this for a soundbite, like, to me, it's worth it, because that's worth it. And if somehow we continue to get to share the gospel with this person through how we treat them, how we talk to them, how we respect them, it's like, sign me up for that.
Yeah.
And so I think there are probably things that I'm missing. I mean, we have had to let some coaches go because they don't line up with their actions consistently over time, do not line up with what we want. I had to do that. Coaches that coached with us for a long time, coaches where they're gone and people are like, why in the world? And we're like, they just needed to move on. They moved and it's like, there have been those moments, but I think that more than anything, it's created more opportunities to, change the perception, of what a Christian business owner could be and what Christians can be.
Mm. Did that athlete end up getting a membership and giving you a chance? Is that what happened?
Yeah. Oh, so yes, they've been a member for probably a year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I participated, and they come to events now, which was something, they had mentioned, hey, we're probably not ever coming to anything, and I'm not trying to be mean. That, I'm paraphrasing. So if they're listening, I'm paraphrasing, sorry. But they went from shy, not overly engaging to, coming to events and participating. So it's cool.
That's amazing. I mean, that's the two things with the coaches that don't really align and that athlete, those two examples. I mean, that's like almost quintessentially the love of Christ, which is to rebuke someone or like to make it clear whenever they're not aligned with the right values, and to love someone who is struggling,
Well, and to be clear about the coaching aspect, there's alignment from your job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then there's alignment from a character standpoint. And when I feel those two things both have conflicts that are not redeemable, then I think it's time to move on.
How long do you tolerate it if like one of those things is kind of off kilter, but the other one's good?
Tolerate's a tough word to use. We try to be proactive. as soon as possible, and I think that I have a good level of discernment in people that we usually can pick up pretty quick when it's time to go.
That's good.
Because there are times there are things from, let's just take a coaching perspective. If you're habitually late to a class, like I'm not going to somehow convince you that those people should be the most important and not your own life. If you're, don't ever help out picking up classes when another coach needs help, or if you're, not in a good mood, like there are things like that you can just start picking up on, and you're just like, I'm not going to be able to help you out of that.
What's the shortest tenure you've ever had for a coach?
We've had interns so we have an intern process, and we've had interns that have not lasted more than a couple weeks.
For those kinds of...
No, just for, so for clarity, that has happened because they're like, oh, this is how the sausage is made. I'm out, just everything that it entails, shortest tenure on coach. I have no idea, to be quite honest.
That's fair. I could see it being, I was just curious. It's like, there was this one guy who was only here for a week because he just...
No, so if you were... So the way our internship works is it's roughly 50 hours of time prior to you ever coaching. And so there have been people that have been in that process that we have said, man, I think you're better as a athlete than a coach. Now, it hasn't been that silly. It's there have been times where the process has weeded people out. But rarely, and I say rarely because I'm sitting here thinking through 18 years of coaches, rarely have we had somebody go through that process and then totally bomb out.
That's a sign of a good process.
Yes. Now we have had people go through the process, and then over time, 6 months later, Dr. Jekyll turns to Mr. Hyde, and it's like, oh, this is what we're really getting.
Yeah, you were able to fake it till you make it for 6 months.
Then you kind of nip it in the bud and move on, But, staying with the nip it in the bud, it's like you've got to prune a rose bush to get the prettiest roses. And so, and then there are also times, like, this is not really part of your question, but there are times where somebody's time with us is over. The season is up. And, learning not to be offended by that and to embrace it and know that that just means there's another opportunity for them somewhere else and another opportunity for us to find somebody. There's a good book called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And in that book, he gives the analogy of a bus. And if somebody in your organization's in the wrong seat of the bus, then you need to stop the bus, because if they're in the wrong seat, that means somebody else is going to end up in the wrong seat, because two people can't sit with each other, right? And so your responsibility as the business owner is to stop the bus and get people in the right seats, which also can be you need to get out. And so that's better for them, and that's better for the organization. And so we really lean strongly on when it's time for somebody to go, we don't wait. And it's not from, it is literally for their good and for the good of the community from a coaching perspective, because we don't take coaching lightly. We obviously have different personalities. Different coaches bring different things to the table, which I think they need to. But when we look at, are you a team player? And that's the number one priority. And if you suck as a team player, then we just cut you. Yeah. And it's personal to our community. It's not personal to them. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, if they're in the wrong position, they're not happy. They need to go get fulfilled somewhere. And yeah, it doesn't make some of the fallout like easier, and it just is what it is. So
Yeah, some of that is definitely difficult regardless. I mean, that's hard conversations, right?
but it's only, I think too, it goes back to expectations. It's only hard if like you're expected for it to be like hard, And
Okay,
I think
it's going to be like a kind of a crappy 10-minute conversation telling this person that,
but some of it's not crappy. I mean, if you stand firm, in what you hold true to, then it's literally, you don't align with what we need. Period.
yeah, okay.
And you're not changing that, or you haven't held up your end of the bargain, because this is the second or third time we've talked. So it's just time for you to move on. And I think that you can be grateful for somebody for what they've done, and they could have been of great service. And also, it is time for them to move on.
And it's like you said, it's not personal to them. It's respectful to them as a person. It's like, yeah, it's just time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. So we're dancing around the bush a little bit. What actually makes a good community as opposed to something that's just kind of hollow and looks like a community?
Yeah, I think that what makes a community real is the space for transparency. So being who you are. And I think the unique thing about CrossFit specifically is, when everybody's sweaty, from working out, people are all tired, everybody's legs are sore from lunges. You already have this middle ground that we can all agree on. And then from there, you can begin, like, your vulnerability or ability to be vulnerable grows because you feel known already. And then as you feel known, you also realize, well, if your legs hurt and my legs were hurt and so do theirs, well, now I'm a part of something. And so then when you can increase somebody's ability to be vulnerable, when you can create a situation where they feel a part of something, then people can then let their hair down, per se. And so I think space where people can be authentic and people can be vulnerable, and that's what creates good community. Because if you look at, when I think about community, I don't think about everybody being the same. And so you don't find that at our gym. And so when not everybody is the same, then they have to have something else in common. And so it starts first with, like I said, the pain of the lunges.
Yeah.
But then I think as people really have true, genuine conversations, we all realize that we want to be known for who we are. Like, we want to be truly accepted for who I am, all my faults, all my failures. We also want to be loved. And so I think as people, what I've experienced is as people become more vulnerable and authentic, we both realize that we have the same fears and anxieties and struggles in life. From a spiritual standpoint, you and I are both wrapped up in the same same sin in different forms. And that as men, we fight running away and being totally secluded, to pride, to lust. We struggle with all that. It looks different for you than it does for me. And then now we start finding this commonality. It's like, wait, we are the same. And so then ideally that community of folks then begins to take care of each other. And we see it with all classes. It's so neat. Whether it's a wedding, a birth, a death, a job change, the way individual classes and the community as a whole at times surround and uplift each other is just awesome. I mean, we, in our community right now, we have multiple women with cancer. diagnosis of cancer. We have an athlete that had a stroke back in June. Totally transformed his life, still unable to speak. We got people that go and visit him from the gym on a weekly basis at the rehab center. So we just had a couple get married. We've got couples with babies on the way, just had a couple babies born. And it's like, who's on the mill train? CrossFit. We just had somebody that lost their stepdad. You know who's going to be at that funeral? All the people from their class. As long as it's local, I'm not sure where it is. But, it's like, but it's just CrossFit. That's the part. Earlier when you talked about what's heavy about it or, what's scary is that if not done, and I'm not saying this to take out the sovereignty of God, but if we don't steward this well, do those opportunities happen? Yeah. And that's the scary part. But it's also like kind of freeing of like, but I'm also being asked to do something that the Lord wants done. 100%. And he usually comes out on top. That's a joke. The story's already over.
Yeah. So it's like the community, like a real true community is built on, it's like the depth of common vulnerabilities through like the lens of your differences almost. It's like,
yes. And I think as you become more vulnerable with somebody, and then you and I both realize our junk is pretty junky, it then begins to build trust, because you know what you're not going to do when this is what I've experienced, I should say. And there are outliers to this. And I'm sure your listeners could send in stories. But when there's true vulnerability and true authentic relationships, then trust gets built, because I don't need to go and gossip about your stuff, because then I'm just outing myself. Yeah, and I don't need to make myself bigger when you and I both are on the same terms as like, no, we're really struggling with this one area. Then I don't need to go anonymous prayer request for Austin. Oh, sorry. Just, like, it's like, no, let's enter into, that together. Now that's on a spiritual side. For people that are non-believers that are part of the community that are totally into each other, it's like you're in the thick of things. I see this a ton with parenting. For example, you're in the thick of it with your kids. Well, so am I. Wait, your kids don't go to bed either? Oh, mine don't either. Oh, your kids are doing this? Oh, so am I. Well, then all of a sudden there begins to build this bond of trust, and you begin to trust that other person. And then that's where I think you see community really take off.
What does our culture get wrong about strength?
Strength in all aspects takes time. None of it is fast. It is typically all linear, from a standpoint of slow progress over time. When you're looking at strength from a physical standpoint, building strength, it takes time. The old ways of getting stronger are the ways of getting stronger. So a pet peeve I have of the fitness industry is this push that everything has to get tricked up and switched up. And yet, if people would turn off all their phones and quit listening to blue check marks that paid for that, and they did basic strength training. So if we were to take back squat, for example, all loads being appropriate under the supervision of a professional. There's my disclaimer. And you did a 5-3-1 strength cycle, proven over time, you will get stronger. You know, and so nowadays I feel that to make something shiny, to make it seen and make it feel like it's different, people are tricking things up. And so when you look at strength, like your muscles are not mystified by something that a fitness influencer did. And so I think going back to the very basics and being disciplined in those, as boring as they are, is what makes you stronger. And so to flush that out a little bit, so spending time doing planks, one of the dumbest, boringest exercises in the world, but also super useful. Doing mobility. Then, warming up, having warm-up sets. Then squatting to uncomfortable weights per the reps and all that. And then resting for 3 minutes in between sets. It's none of that, like very little of that is really put out there nowadays.
Yeah, it was weird that that's kind of a controversial thing you just said almost.
Yeah.
It's like, how could it be simple? It has to be crazy.
Yeah, and so I think that's a very exhausting aspect of the fitness space right now, is that everything, like basic and simple doesn't work, so we have to get creative. And you need a mouthpiece while you lift, and you need a weight belt, and you need shoes and knee sleeves and like all this stuff. Which I think probably add some benefit, but I don't know they're necessary. For some people they are. Strength from a physical standpoint would be that. And I think strength from like an individual, like inner strength standpoint is finding out who you are and who God's made you to be. And in doing that, so it's something that I did a couple years ago. It's called a life plan. And that was very, very transformational for my life to really succinct some things down and see where I came from, where I am now, and where I want to be. And all that through the lens of the Lord. And so, I went through that with a class at church back in 2021, not 2001, 2021. And then spent the last 5 years participating in that program, helping lead people through those exercises and through that class and curriculum. And so I think like your inner strength can be built by knowing who God's made you to be. And then what is his calling on your life? And so knowing that, my purpose is to inspire people for growth. Well, then let's go. That's what, if I'm a screwdriver and I'm trying to cut a piece of wood, it's going to be a very arduous task, and really not going to be good for anybody involved. But if I'm a screwdriver and then I'm presented with a wall full of almost finished screws, then it's, hey, let's go, And so I think that when you can really dial in who God made you to be and what he wants you to do for him and for the kingdom, then I think there's some inner strength there that gets you through the tough conversations and the hard days and being sick and being let down by people because there is something else out there.
It's interesting how they're kind of similar. The physical strength and the like inner strength, the kind of personal development. It's like what you first said is it takes time. That's the thing. Yeah. No matter what, it takes time. And I think another little like it takes time, and it's going to be a lot harder than you think it's going to be.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's not only time, and then there's tension. So when you look at it from a exercise physiology standpoint, like you gain your progress with time under tension. And I think from your own spiritual and emotional standpoint, you gain that through time under tension. And so are we pressing into areas that provide tension in a good way? Or are we not? And it's time, it's discipline. And, if you want to build strength the right way, you're going to wake up on days where your legs feel like complete trash. Staying with the squat example. And like, are you going to call call it in for the day, or are you going to show up? In the same way, I mean, there are days where I question why my alarm's going off at 3:37 on a Wednesday morning. Like, God, is this really what I want to do? To be quite frank, and it's, yes, like I do. And I have 20-minute ride to get my head on straight. And then it's up to, it's just up to then the discipline to do that. So,
David, it's 12:30. So I think,
oh, there you go.
I got one question that I ask everyone the first time they come on. Mm-hmm. And so I'll pose the question to you, and I think there'll be probably a part 2 of this. Yeah. So if a young person was about to live a life very similar to your own, what is one thing you would beg them to do or learn sooner than you did?
I'll use one word and then I'll explain, is invest. And so what I did indirectly, so without knowing, but it paid dividends, was I was invested in by men. And then I also invested in other men, like trying to build relationships with wiser, sage type, older people. So that I would also invest financially at a younger age, like a way younger age. And then also invest in myself as far as education, reading more, learning, like true learning, not just like sitting under somebody, but going out and in some kind of academic setting, learn more. I love to research, so I can get caught up with that. Researching and learning are similar, but they're more cousins than they are siblings. And so, you can research a lot, but like really sitting under and learning. So it's just investing, and so investing in mentors, investing in yourself, and then investing financially.
Ladies and gentlemen, David Nichols. Thank you, David. This was a lot of fun. I want to give you an opportunity to just plug your gym where people can find what you're doing. Yeah. What are the links, the social medias, whatever it is?
And this is where adaptation is very slow for me. I don't have a lot of personal social media. That will be changing soon.
Ooh.
Yeah. But CrossFitFlowerMound.com is our website, and CF Flower Mound, I think, is all our, handles on everything. Soon, I don't know, coming soon, there's a project I've began some work on, that will be a pretty fun little project. And so, eventually once I get that rolling, I'll come back so I can give you that information.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it. Cool. Awesome. David, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Yeah, no, hey, I appreciate it. And, I love what you're doing here, and it's been a pleasure.